I'm going to present this paper, which is joint project with Márton Fleck, and he is a PhD student at CEU. And the project is titled The Xerox Effect, Communication Technology and Political Actions in Autocracy. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm going to also create more questions. I'm not going to give full answers to what we have, and I'm very excited to present this here because I think this is the right crowd to help me with the questions that we're raising. So what is it we're talking about? Okay. So autocracies have been the dominant form of government in human history, and they still rule a quarter of countries worldwide. So these are some statistics from the Pew Research Survey to give an idea.
If you click on the 3 points, then you can hide the bar.
The 3 points.
More. You can see the title. Sorry.
Okay.
You can see yourself. One hide floating. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you. And we have a lot of empirical evidence, or some empirical evidence, on how media helps autocrats to seize power and hold it, but we really don't know much about how autocracies die. So in this paper, we're going to try to tackle this question a little bit and move from that a little bit more. So what is the research question that we have is, do information technologies help to promote democratic values and contribute to the fall of autocratic regimes? And we're going to take this question a little bit further and try to understand whether these democratic values in turn promote growth and development. So we have a lot of anecdotes that suggest that this is indeed the case, but we really don't have much of micro level evidence that this happens. So the literature that we're going to link to is media as a key instrument in the rise and consolidation of autocratic regimes, traditional media as a helper to promote government accountability in democracies. However, again, we really don't know much about how information technology and independent press, in this case, helps shape and the fall of autocratic regimes. And we have the paper that is mostly linked to us is this paper by Dietmar. It's a QJ of 2011, and he looks at the impact of Gutenberg press and economic outcomes. So he looks at the distance from press. So we have the question now, and then we were thinking about this question while CEU was in Hungary. And what we were thinking about was these Xerox photocopy machines that were distributed in the late 80s in Hungary. So we can think of these Xerox machines as printed press, independent press that is coming to the country in a setting where media is absolutely controlled. All type of media is absolutely controlled by the government. So we're going to look at the effect of these Xerox machines on political outcomes, mainly. So the first step is going to look at the political outcomes, and we're going to focus on short and long run outcomes. And we're going to also link this with long run outcomes such as firm establishment and growth. Yes.
Well, this coincides with the appearance of PCs, personal computers in Hungary as well. So the early 80s and late 80s were the period when personal computers appear also in country, and it is possible to buy from, say, Taiwan.
Mm-hmm. So
why do you think that this might simply just
okay, so this I think about the PCs, and what I'm going to show you is that I went to the archives of the National Library, and I saw that there were actually some advertisements about PCs and other technologies that were sold. However, this was a massive type of program that comes in the country, and many people are able to use and photocopy documents, right? So the PCs, I really don't know much about who was able to acquire a PC, and I don't think that this was a mass activity from everyone. And we're going to see a little bit what's going on with this printed press that is coming in the country rather than other different type of technology. But if you're thinking that it's the effect of the PCs, then we have to think about it. Yeah.
Spread and the PC imported that time.
I would say that it was smooth, but maybe I am wrong and I will need to have data.
Actually, they have been the same times at the Portland Institute, Xerox and PC.
Okay.
I agree with you actually that big PCs were really not last in the 90s, and second, there was no internet.
I bought PC 1984. 87.
Yeah, but you're not a typical. Basically, PCs were not present where I and even more importantly, they were not collected. So there was printers were very rudimentary, few of them. So you couldn't just use a PC for spreading and reproducing information. I think that's the most important thing.
But you're mainly talking about printing right?
Yes.
Or
I'm going to come to that, but what we know from talking to people is that the majority of activities was through Samizdat. The reason that the government allowed them in the country was for research and development. So we're linking them right now with data on patents to see whether. But I'm going to conclude.
okay. But because Samizdat was not, as far as I know, computer.
But we also don't know much about the circulation of this Samizdat. So we know from the accounts.
But you know that for the previous technology, not the Xerox machines, but the other stencil.
Yeah, it
was like these, it was authorized, and there was specific institutions that could have access to it, etc., etc.
So we talked with some people that were involved back in the days in political activities, and what they told us is that when this Xerox machine came in the country, they made their job obsolete, because basically it will take for them months to actually try to put together some pamphlets, and then by the time that they were done putting this together, then the Xerox machine came and they had to be jobless. Okay, so there were other questions?
No.
Okay. So you know better than I do the Hungarian setting. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But what we know is in the country back in the days, and this is from actually a paper, and they cite that there were only 12 photocopies machines, and they were under lock. So maybe, but it was very, very hard to be able to print and to be able to multiply information. And in case you needed to print something, then you will need to have this approved, and then you will leave whatever you needed to print, and then they would come back with your print. So this was very, very hard to actually print material. So what happens in 84 is that basically George Soros in his book is telling about this big plan that he had to take down the Soviet system, and it's true, it's in his book. So I'm telling you what I read, and his vision was to set this up in Poland. But then he realizes that it's better maybe to set up his Soros Foundation, he wanted to call it back then, he couldn't, in Hungary because of his Hungarian ties and the language. So this was a huge, massive undertaking because he needed to convince people to come on board and be part of this his foundation. So the government back in the day was lacking resources. From the accounts that I've read, they also wanted to stretch a little bit the muscles with respect to the other countries around that they cared about research and development. So Soros was promising to bring in books and different type of things that will help with research in the country. So the government agreed that the Soros Foundation to be founded in Hungary, and it had to be anchored with the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. So the governing body was composed by two chairmen, and they both had veto powers on one another. So the agreement behind the doors was that Soros wouldn't participate in political activities, and what he got in return was that the grantees from his projects wouldn't be denied because of their political past. So everybody, what we have in the data is that everybody eventually got, everybody that applied got these machines. So this was very interesting to read into his books, but basically what he says is that they started different programs, and perhaps he says our most successful program was starting importing these Xerox machines. So I talked to some historians in Hungary, and what they say is that they really even didn't know how this project came about, because before importing Xerox machines, they had imported books, right, or given scholarships. So the program officially initiated in the spring of '85, and they were importing the state-of-the-art photocopy machines from the United States. So there was a huge operation. These photocopy machines had to be imported. They had to come through the major ports in Europe, shipped to Budapest, and from Budapest they had to be shipped around the country.
Who received the machines?
Very good question. I'm sorry?
Did we get for
I should have included slide on who received the machine. The majority was library and public institutions. That's a good slide to actually include. But so this was the call for application, and then this was in the archives of CEU library. So I was interested to see how all of this process comes about. So you cannot really read here, but in here you can actually read that these are Xerox. One of the programs is Xerox. So everything was extremely transparent, right? So they would make the call for application. Institutions or people would apply for, and as far as we know, everybody that applied for a Xerox machine, they eventually got it. So also the winners. These are the documents. This is the newspaper articles. I was super excited to go through them. I don't speak Hungarian, but I had to translate it on Google Translate. The process was extremely transparent. Even the winners were published, right? So you could read in newspapers. I didn't manage to get a photo of that because I wasn't able to find it, but yeah, the winners were publicly announced. So at some point, they realized that they actually got this Trojan horse in the country. So the secret police also got worried about all the information that was multiplied. So they tried to derail the process at some point. So Soros challenged Kalar in a public radio interview. This is also in one of the books about him, not him himself. And what the accounts are actually saying is that he was advised not to do this, but he really cared about his program. So 2 weeks after this interview, he got a phone call saying that the program is going to be continued, so everybody is going to.
Sorry, what year are we now?
I'm sorry?
What year are we in?
Here it should be around around the beginning of the program, still. No, in 85, I think this must be 86, 7. That is not towards the end. This is where things were getting out of hand. Yes.
And how many Xerox machines by this?
Okay, so this is the stock of Xerox machines in the country. So the majority, the distribution is roughly equal within Budapest and the rest of the country. And this is the geographical distribution of the machines. So the majority of them were in Budapest. And what they tell me, the Hungarians, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that these are major cities, right? So it makes a lot of sense where they were distributed. And what you see here in gray is proximity to train stations. So we have that variable here where we are doing the distance from the train stops. And you can see that the majority of these machines were located close to train stations. Also, it makes a lot of sense because the city centers train stations are located close to the city center. We haven't used this variable yet for anything, but I thought it was interesting. So, data sources. So the Open Society Archives give us a lot of data in terms of grantees and whatever was saved. So we don't have a full list, but we have the majority of them. So what we are actually using, and this is publicly available data, is the foundation annuals from 85 to 89. So this can be found online. We have here a full list of grantees, but we don't have the names of who applied for, which is actually in the Open Society Archives. That's what they done and provided it to us. So right now we have institutions and city, and we geolocated these institutions and city with Google Place API, which is the data that I showed you earlier on, in order to look at the distribution of the machines. So in total, in this time period, were 449 machines in 74 cities, and mostly they were in universities and libraries. So ideally, we would use this information disaggregated. We cannot do that right now, and this is something that we're working on, but the data is what it is. So we're going to aggregate this data at the municipality level in order to have our outcomes. Yes.
So if my library, for example, in my city received a Xerox machine, then from that point on, anyone could work there and do the copying, or how was the access? So
the city is going to be considered as treated for us.
Yeah, but in practice, so what's the mechanism you have in mind? So anyone can go there and copy their stuff, or was it?
So what we know is that earlier it was much more restricted. And there was not information, there was not a lot of information, right, that these machines are coming in. But over time, yes, these machines were used to, I'm going to show some evidence that the borrowed books from the library are increasing also. So we're showing this as evidence that there is more usage of.
Let me just add this point that there is a legal arrangements so that the machines could be used easily and freely for those who are entitled. So, for example, in case of our institute, it was obligatory to put into a local that everyone can have access. While in the printing machine, where the official documents were made, was in a locked room and used only by the employee who was designated to do that. So that was stipulated in the agreement how to use the Xerox machine.
Okay, is there anywhere that I can find this agreement?
That's a good question.
Yes, but maybe I can cite lots in my paper. But this is important information.
So I don't know whether you can find the so-called border contracts or something like that, what was in between the foundation and the recipient beneficiary.
That's a good suggestion. I should.
I'm not sure, but I remember that was really case that and well, the other aspect that how to ensure the paper, use of paper, so that it obviously depend on the institutions.
So you count which counted how many papers?
Yeah,
But that's a good point, because we were thinking about the paper usage as an instrument, but we are not able to find anything about paper or ink. Yes, I am aware. So thank you for.
That was the official reason for applying these machines, because in very specific cases, it's possible that only those institutes applied for a Xerox machine who wanted to copy illegal lessons. And because in a local area there is a anti-communist and pro-capitalist sentiment, and people want to read this. And if in locations where there were no demand for this stuff, then people haven't applied for it.
I'm going to show you some of these talks, and you're going to see that you are absolutely right, that it's selection on who is applying for these machines, and it's not random. The allocation of the machines is not random. So the official reason for the application were, of course, research and development, right? So, but I'm going to show you that there was a huge selection on who applied for, who got the machine, because everybody that applied eventually got. Okay, so receivers of this is from the Open Society Archives. And these are the data that we could eventually get the information on, because it's very detailed in terms of the applicants. So the outcome variables that we're going to use, and Attila is going to help me later on with this, is that right now we have election outcomes from the 89, and 90 and onwards, and we have two pre-treatment years that are the 45 and 47 elections. So what we were trying to get at some point was also Fidesz party membership at the settlement area, or any type of political party opposition at the regional level. We haven't been able to get the data yet. And something that I was really thinking, and we finally got access to this data, but then talking to people at CEU, they said, no, don't do it, because there were apparently no political prisoners in Hungary in the 80s. Can you confirm that this is the case, or am I misled to believe that I shouldn't go into this archival data? So I got access to the data from one of the trips but it's very hard data to actually collect and combine. So if you also have the sense that it's not worth it, then it's maybe, I'm sorry? No, okay, good. I'm sorry?
There must have been some.
I thought there must have been some. So other type of data that we're going to have is library subscribers and borrowed items. And then we have the CEU microdata that most of you know, which we're going to use for establishment and growth. And this is the best data that we have right now, because we have this at the micro level and we have pre-transfer this. These are the only data that I can show some event study analysis. And this is the most credible piece of evidence that we have. And the rest, you're going to attack me for the rest of this talk, so feel free to do that. Yes.
Have you thought to include the scientific publication data?
Scientific?
Yeah, it's, for that period, I suppose that the scopus could be available, in which local universities are also identified.
That's a good idea. So I was thinking about this type of data, and I really didn't know where to start with because.
Scopes is downloadable.
Okay. Thanks.
Patents, maybe.
I'm sorry. And so we're working on patents, and I managed to get all the patent data. For a lot of them, we don't have the location. So it's going to be a subsample for all patents that we have the location. And that is also in the to-do list. But if somebody is interested in this data, I'm happy to share because we're collecting them. So it's, yes.
Regarding the political part, you could as well use the number of the members of the Communist Party in each municipality, so you could have an idea about how large part of the population was pro and against the Communist Party.
Yeah, that would be great if I can get that at the yearly level or something like this, the membership. I haven't been lucky when it comes to membership data of any sort. So thanks. But I was looking mostly at the political opposition. That's something.
Yeah, but I mean,
the Communist Party should be much better documented.
yeah.
You're right. I was thinking
they also had their
You have not that luck.
I think in many cases what happened is not that. So I don't think that if someone would become opposition language, then they would just go to the local party office and say that okay, I'm out. So I don't think that's.
No, but even the members coming in, so you see the subscription not increasing, right? But at least in the previous year, okay, for pre-trans, that would be important.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not completely aware of the CEU microdata, so you mentioned that we are pre-trans.
Yes.
What does it mean?
So I'm going to show the data to you, but we have this firm establishment, and apparently there were some private firms in the 80s also.
Indeed.
Yes. Yes. So I'm going to show the pre-trans because we have adoption of this new technology coming at different points in time for different cities. So we can have a pre-trend there for. So in an event study, was is everybody that gets treated, but they are.
We have data on these
yes.
various forms of semi-legal private firms.
So we know what was private firm, and Attila has worked with this data much better than I have.
Because you know that there was these strange forms of firms, GMK and VGMK, which were sort of firms. That was a legalized way of, legalizing using the machines of the big socialist firms for production of other things.
Calling them entrepreneurs instead of firms is more precise.
Right?
Calling them entrepreneurs instead of firms.
Yeah, and
we're looking at this establishment, but it's a good question. What exactly? Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so we have, and for some pre-trans, again, you know this data better than I do. So we have some data from the 80s, and we also digitalized the 1880 census in order to do some matching with very early data. So these are our censuses that we digitalized again. So in case somebody is interested in working with this data, feel free to reach out. We're happy to share because we did a massive job in terms of collecting it and scanning it so that they are searchable. So feel free to reach out. And I'm going now to what is that we're doing is that, of course, the ideal experiment would be to randomly allocate this Xerox machine to cities and compare those that receive the machine with those that don't. And unfortunately, this wasn't the case. Next time we should please do it in the sake of research. So real life is very, very complicated. So more developed and politically active areas receive the photocopy machines, and because they are to apply for, and in order to deal with this, we're going to do propensity score matching or different type of matching with a wide range of covariates that are, so we can be very fancy in terms of the matching technique. So we can do this machine learning where you're throwing in a lot of covariates and you're trying to predict the treatment. But again, I understand that it's very unsatisfying from an applied person point of view, although I much more believe a matching technique rather than an instrumental variable, but that's a matter of pure preferences. So real life is very messy, and as you can see, this is our balance table before the matching. And you can really see here that the treated area have higher population, they have higher literacy rate, more association members, more financial institutions. What is that I thought was very, very surprising are these electoral outcomes in the 40s, which at least in the turnout and communist vote in 47, they really don't seem to differ. But again, 47 is very, very far away. And we really don't know what happened.
These are really 1880, the first.
Yes, yes.
And why?
We also wanted to go back there and see what's going on there, where they different.
We compare the literacy rate 100 years ago.
They are also different in literacy rate in 1980.
Okay.
I'm sorry. So we have the population in the 1980s here. And again, you can see that treated areas have different characteristics, and they are also more likely to be closer to the one to Budapest.
Would you do a figure where you would show like population categories of Hungarian settlements, and then show by the category what percentage of them have a Xerox machine? Because now you are basically, it seems to me that you are comparing all the big towns to all the villages. And if it's not the case, it would be very useful.
Okay, so what the matching is going to do, and I'm going to show you later on, is going to choose these controls that are very similar to the treatment group, given the variables that we throw in. But that's a very good sanity check to do it after the matching to see what is going on. Yes.
Put this question differently. Were there any towns, let's say about 10,000 or 30,000, that didn't receive a Xerox machine? Like any large towns?
So a lot of, so we have 73 towns that are treated, right? So there must be a lot of big towns that did okay. How large they were, I don't know, but
that I think it's really the main issue, because if the 73 largest city in Hungary, then it's an end of the game.
There's no need to go forward. This is fun. It's a very important question, and ideally, if we have any variable that has a long pre-period, where we can do some kind of synthetic matching, that would also be something that maybe might alleviate the issues of the applied econometrician. but we are doing the best we can with the data that we have. And I think the question is still interesting. Yes.
So maybe I missed it, but was there any substantial time variation in terms of when they received the?
There is time variation, so these machines are coming in different points in time. Right, but I would need a lot of variables that I have the time variation there. So some of the census data that we have the time variation, but I would need a lot of pre-trends in order to be able to do this kind of synthetic. What is exactly that you have in mind?
I don't see why you would need time variation.
If I'm doing a synthetic controls or synthetic matching, I would need a trajectory of paths to be similar, and then one gets the treatment and the other.
If you have data on the time profile of the distribution of machines, that would be very interesting to see the first. And then whether the profile of those say.
That's a great point, and I was trying to look into that. So who has first, and whether can I predict who gets it later, and then create a control group out of two potential ones that can both receive it. But then they both, one receives it earlier. The problem and the main problem with this project is that the political outcome data, we have only a snapshot in 89. So the time variation there is not going to help. But if we have any other type of data with time variation, that we can say that these photocopies are coming in and they are changing the attitudes or the
significant change in the output visa system in 87. And if you have data on the tourist output in Hungary, then that might have somehow perhaps.
And the tourist inflow.
Tourist inflow also, but tourist inflow might not be correlated that much with your story, but I think the outflow might is better. Yes, much.
No, that's a good idea. Thanks. Yes, I have so many questions answered.
Wanted to save it from the end of the game scenario. If you are, the main variable is Xerox machine per person or per population, that would be good because then you have some variation across the large numbers, I guess.
So we're controlling for these characteristics.
Because I think that still the Xerox machine has some limitations in terms of how many people they can serve.
Yeah.
So if you have one machine in Budapest, that's not the same as you have one machine on Shazam. So, yeah. So I think machine per person is a good idea.
Intensity would be another measure.
Yeah, actually, I have a similar comment. So maybe time variation could matter in the sense that it might be important for how long the settlement had Xerox machine before the elections. Maybe 4 years could have a higher effect.
Yeah, so we have some results with that also, but again, it's just a snapshot afterwards. So we're using that variable, and we're also trying to look at the time. Yeah, we're trying to.
It's not like binary treatment, but.
No, so right now what I'm going to present to you is a binary treatment, yes or no. So we have tried the time, the duration, the exposure. We have also tried to see whether receiving the machine in a specific year, how that affects. And then we had some interesting results there. The problem is that in 1 year, it seems that almost no machines came. So presenting the table was also a little bit like, because we don't have much variation, but that's something that we should include in the next questions. There was another question.
I will save my remark for afterwards.
Okay. Killing me gently after.
No, you can't.
Okay, so okay, great. So the matching works great. And the results that we have with this matching, of course, they were also they work also great. So you're absolutely free to doubt them. What they are actually showing is that areas that receive the machines are more likely to show up to vote in 89 and vote yes. So this is a combined yes in the 89 referendum about the democratic transition of the country. They're also more likely to turn out to vote in the 90s, and they are less likely to vote for post-communist parties in the 90s. This is a final interesting results that Marty looked at, and this is apparently the, correct me if the interpretation is fine. The vote share in the 2016 referendum for the quotas, the immigrant quota. So this was apparently also debated as with respect to Soros plan, etc., etc. So the magnitude of this coefficient is very, very small, but is in the right direction. Okay, so this is these are all these variables are percent. So this is very, very small in magnitude, but is in the direction. So what? Yes.
You mentioned that you are doing one-to-one matching at the matching, but you have now 2,000 observation instead of 150.
Yeah, so I need to check. Yeah, so thanks.
So have you tried to do the same thing, the same matching, but having election outcomes from the 40s on the left-hand side?
Yeah, so the 40s said that we have those placebos, that's fine.
And it's
yes, it's a terminal effect.
Okay.
And so we try different matching types, and we try kernels and whatever, and even this fancy type of logistic lasso where you're throwing in a lot of the variables and the predictors that seem to matter are what we care about. But again, I absolutely agree that these are matching outcomes, and they are. So in this case, we're also looking at spillover effects, and we're looking at the distance from treated units for the nearby areas. So this is in the OLS. This is a pure OLS, pure descriptives here, in terms of whether areas that are further away from this. Take this as a sanity check. Areas that are further away from a machine, how they are likely to turn out to vote yes in the 89 referendum and this post-communist vote. So the further away that you are from a machine, the less likely you are to show up to vote, and so it seems that these machines matter. But again, we are. Again, it's the same selection issue that we're worried about. And this was a little bit surprising to see, but it's a very small coefficient. It goes none of the negative sign, and I haven't been able to find a reason for it. Okay, so it seems that there are some spillovers to the neighboring settlements, but maybe thinking about reframing this would be interesting to look at what is going on. Okay, so the mechanism that the literature is talking about when it comes to a printed press and how printed press affects voting behavior, they are thinking about two main mechanisms, and one is information provision. So we're enhancing information. So again, think about this Xerox machine as Gutenberg press. The government has no control about what is going on, so that there is a lot of information inflow to people that were actually eager to get information. This is how we're thinking about the first channel, and then the second channel that the literature is talking about is enhanced coordination. So these novel communication technologies coming to the country and is helping individuals synchronize their actions, right? So this happens a lot with social media. the current literature is focusing on that. We absolutely rule this out. We have no evidence of enhanced coordination. That can absolutely be the case, but there were absolutely very few protests in Hungary, except for fewer ones in Budapest. I think my understanding of the Hungarian settings is that they still had a lot of trauma from the '56 revolution, so people wouldn't show up to protest. So we're focusing on these enhanced information channels. And in order to show you that there was actually demand for information, and we can think about these Xerox machines as printed press, from the interviews or from what I have read is that these machines were used for some stuff, and they were also used for photocopying important material, bookkeeping, and material that is actually related to research and development and the publication process in science. So here, this is again the National Library Archives, in order to actually show that there was demand for foreign press and what's going on in the world. And this is newspapers back in this is 86, I think it was. And these are two articles, one from Der Spiegel and the other one, The Economist. So this is translated in Hungarian. Once you have a photocopy machine, you don't actually wait for the press to publish this. You can translate your own and photocopy to distribute among your peers that think alike. So this is what we think was also happening at the time. So given that the matching is a little bit, again, problematic or hard to digest, we're going to try to see whether the mechanisms that we have in mind about what's being printed and what is being photocopied is actually holding up in the data. Again, we don't have any information about paper, ink, or anything that can show us the use of these photocopy machines. But we're going to use data on library users. And we have time variation in library users. And in order to try to convince you that this machine helped also with the entrepreneurial mindset, I'm going to use the data that I mentioned about the number of firm establishment and growth. So noise. Okay, so very, very nice. We have 4 estimators here. This is very hard reading. But what surprised me when I saw these results is that you can see here that library users per capita, there is absolutely, no change, I would say. And then the library stock also doesn't change. So these are very noisy estimates. All the 4 estimators are showing the same pattern. But what's interesting, and if you wanna think a little bit about the fact that the trend here seems to be moving upwards, and 3 out of 4 estimators are pointing that there is an increased trend in borrowed items per user. So again, take these results with a little bit of pinch of salt or a lot, but it looks like that borrowed items are increasing. So these items might be used to photocopy and circulate. The fact that library users and library stock is not changing, it seems to me good news. Because with the monitoring that was going on at the time, I wouldn't want to enroll and be monitored because I take a library card once this Xerox machines are coming in. This is my interpretation, and if you have others. Okay, firm level output, they are a little bit more convincing. So in here we have these firms incorporated. And in here we can again exploit this time variation of the machines coming in the country. And here, these are a little bit more convincing results, I would say, in terms of what is going on. So it seems that the likelihood that firms are incorporated, and we had some results with firm survival. It's more likely in treated area. And here the pre-trends are a little bit more convincing, except from one of these leads.
Does firms incorporate this? I mean, is it actually legally publicly picked? So LTDs could not be established before 87. Right. So what is before 87?
That's a very good question, and that was I think that even firms that were with some government ownership were counted as so it's a measure of openness in a sense. Whether you want to buy it fully or you want me to drop them and focus only on activities about or full private ownership, but that's a good something to have in mind.
If there was a question, and then I would say just to look for private entrepreneurs at that time, because it's really hard to understand why there were more firms in one city compared to another city that belongs to state land.
Say it again.
So I think the number of private entrepreneurs is a much better measure of economic activities, because it's hard to understand why is want more firms, larger firms in one city compared to another one, if everything is taken. And how it is related to the commission.
Okay, I see. So you want to see the pure entrepreneurial spirit. So what you have in mind is this type of Dieter story where he is looking at, okay, printed press is coming in. I'm more likely to read more about entrepreneurial.
No, I'm not sure about that. Perhaps you grow much more anti-communist sentiment, and you want to be free and you do your own stuff alone. And there were loopholes in the system which enabled you to work alone, like this GNK one. And there was another one, TS Malik, is that right? I don't know. I look for the English name of this thing.
Yes, thank you.
You have about 9 minutes.
Okay, so I am almost done. So this is good. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so right now where we're trying to understand whether independent media. So again, think about these machines are independent media that is coming in. They are a key facilitator in changing of in causing behavioral change. Okay, behavioral change doesn't happen over time, so we have an evolution that we would want to look into. But we have this independent media that is coming in, and whether this through behavioral change causes the destabilization of autocratic regimes. So the mechanisms that we have in mind here are through information and education. And we're working on both of these mechanisms because it's very hard to combine the data. So what we are actually doing right now is have this patent data, and this is the thing that we're currently working to measure research and development. And here the patent data are high frequency, relatively high frequency, and we can geotag them. So the aggregation is much smaller than the city level. And we can look at the proximity from the machines. So it's a much better measure. So maybe we can aggregate at some higher level, but this is the best that we could come up right now. So we are also collecting data on art and literature, especially music, because the thought that what we were thinking is that we should be able to pick up something somewhere, right? And one of the ways to pick it up would be through material that is written. And we were thinking that one of these ways would be to look at the lyrics and where these musicians are producing in order to be able to see what they are talking about, whether words that are related to freedom and democracy are more likely to appear over time in this.
Yeah, but that's just like Nancy said. They recited poetry from 1848. It is also related to freedom.
Absolutely. But what we're thinking about, so this is the type of things that you do, right? When you are, I live in an oppressed state. So these are the type of things that, and you could see it throughout the countries that went through oppression. Not only they recited what was coming further back, but also there was way more production. So there is something that this can tell us, because we cannot analyze the newspaper articles all the time in order to be able to see whether the language is becoming more liberal. So this is one of the ways to actually look at the language, whether what is being written about and sang about, it's more likely to talk about what is coming up and what is building up by time. So it's manifestation of implicit desires. Yes. Yes.
Perhaps as you are not able to measure this, what you just said, but there is this indirect measure that there is some difference between the different media outlets. Say that the party newspaper was significantly different of, say, the weekly, which was somewhat using different type of language and different type of instrument. Arguments. So that if you can have some geographical distribution of the sold sold number of and what's the difference between the party newspaper and its weekly, then that might give you some hunch that how is spreading in
so I wasn't able to explain that because so we need to have this article digitalized, or we need to have the circulation of
just geographical circulation. I mean,
right, geographical circulation. I haven't been lucky to find that variable. So that was something that was in my list.
They might, I don't think it. So this newspaper still exists.
Yes, so the part of what I showed you is from that newspaper.
So you may just contact them and try to wonder whether they have any information on the
distribution
in the past. And that might be some indirect measure what you are trying to capture.
Yes.
I'm not sure it's a good idea, but have you tried using international surveys? Like I know that the World Value Survey was conducted in Hungary in 1982. So, and they have questions. I don't know how much you can be trusted, and I don't know whether they have municipal details in it, so I didn't check it. But they have questions about how much you talk about politics in your own, with your own friends.
82 is a good, it's a good year because it's a pre.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can, for the matching, if they have it. I mean, if they have the municipal or anything like that, then you can use it for.
Thank you. So I was looking for survey data, but I only found a very limited subset in the 90s. So,
yeah, Hungary, not in every, but Hungary typically participated in many of these international surveys. The World Race was not in 82, not in 1991, only the third. So the first wave and the third wave was conducted. The first wave was in 82.
and these are thousands of observations.
Yeah, representative. But I don't know whether it's, I don't know whether they have.
And then somebody worked with it.
It's online available.
That's good.
So it's true that your first pre-elections was in 1990, but during the 1985 elections, which was supposed to be still our community elections, there was a possibility that multiple candidates could run. And in many cases, actually, oppositional figures managed to get in parliament. And it's might be too early for you because it's in 1985, but in June 19. And I think there were already some machines in the country by then.
I think the first machines were coming in June.
85.
85.
That's
because the foundation was set up in 84, but the machines, the first publication, it was in April and they came in June around.
But then you could use this for another important machine.
Yeah, that's correct. Do you have this data?
I might, I don't know.
Thank you.
But I might.
Yeah, so patent data, I think it's interesting to look at, but there's very few patents across the country.
So we could do the patent that so we scraped all the data from the patent office, and we could go back from the 1880s.
Which office? The international office?
Yeah, the patents, the Hungarian patents office.
Yeah, because then you can probably add the USPTO data too. Because then you have inventors who not just patent in Hungary, but also patent in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some of them already in the 80s. And most importantly, some of them were working for foreign companies. So then the company who owned the patent for them. That could be interesting to hear. Because then you could probably patent, I don't know, but the idea is that there might be some other mechanisms such that information comes from these companies or collaborators who are outside of the country. And then you can identify that also in the Scopus data. If you find like collaborators or local scientists who were able to work with foreigners, that would be interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks.
Any more questions? No, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.